Here is the full story, properly formatted into paragraphs and arranged to let the quiet weight of it land properly. I have not changed a single word of the original. I didn't pack a bag. When the front door slammed behind me, the lock clicking into place sounded like a gunshot in the quiet street. My father's face was the last thing I saw through the glass, his eyes harder than I had ever seen them. My mother didn't even look up from the kitchen floor she was scrubbing, as if trying to wash away my very existence. It was 2 a.m, freezing, and I was standing on the porch in my socks. I didn't have my keys, my phone, or a coat. All I had was the burning taste of Julian on my lips, and the terrifying knowledge that I would do it all over again. Our family lived by a set of unwritten rules. We ate dinner at 6, we went to church on Sundays, and we never aired our dirty laundry in public. My older sister, Clara, was the golden child. She did everything right, including marrying Julian. Julian was older, stable, and incredibly kind. He fit into our family like a missing puzzle piece. For 3 years, he was just my brother-in-law. He was the guy who fixed my flat tires and helped me with my college applications. He was safe. I was the quiet sister, the one who stayed in the shadows and let Clara shine. I didn't mind it. I liked my quiet life. I worked at the local library, stacking books and living inside other people's stories because my own was so boring. Clara and Julian lived just 2 blocks away from our parents. They were over every Sunday for roast dinner. Clara would talk about her job in real estate, and Julian would listen, his chin resting in his hand, smiling. I thought they were happy. I thought we were all happy. That was the illusion we all agreed to maintain. No one yelled, no one cried, and no one talked about what was actually happening beneath the surface. My parents worshipped Julian. He was the son they never had. He bought my father expensive scotch and listened to his stories about the army without interrupting once. Julian was untouchable. He was family. And in our house, family was sacred. Breaking that bond was the ultimate sin. I just didn't realize how easy it was to become a sinner. It started on a Tuesday in October. Heavy rain was drumming against the tall library windows, and the building was mostly empty. I was in the back aisles, putting away heavy history books, when the lights flickered and died. The backup generator kicked in, casting low, orange shadows against the stacks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Clara saying she was stuck at a conference 3 hours away and couldn't pick me up. Then the glass door at the front of the library chimed. I walked out of the shadows, and there stood Julian. He was wearing a wet trench coat, holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. He said Clara had called him, worried I'd be stranded in the storm. I took the warm cup from him, our fingers brushing for a split second. A tiny spark of static electricity jumped between us. We both jumped a little, laughing it off. But as we sat at the heavy oak tables, waiting for the rain to let up, the laughter died down. We started talking, not about Clara, or the family, or the weather. We talked about how lonely the quiet can feel sometimes. Julian looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. He told me he always admired how observant I was, how I saw things others missed. I felt a heat bloom in my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes that I hadn't noticed at Sunday dinner. He confessed that his marriage was lonely. He told me Clara was always working, always gone, and when she was home, she was somewhere else in her head. It was a heavy thing to hold, a secret about my sister. I should have defended her. I should have shut the conversation down. Instead, I leaned closer over the table. I told him I understood what it was like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely invisible. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His palm was warm and rough. We sat there in the dim orange light, listening to the rain, not saying a word. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. I didn't pull my hand away. That was my first mistake. After that night at the library, the world shifted on its axis. Sunday dinners became a torture of my own making. I would sit across from Julian, watching him pass the potatoes to my father, his face a mask of perfect composure. But under the table, his knee would brush against mine. Just a graze, a secret signal that only I understood. It made my skin catch fire. I would look at Clara, beautiful and oblivious, laughing at one of my father's jokes. The guilt was heavy, a physical weight in my stomach that made it hard to swallow. but the guilt was nothing compared to the thrill. Julian started finding excuses to see me. He'd show up at the library with a book he thought I'd like. We'd sit in his car in the parking lot for hours, the windows fogging up from our breath while we just talked. We didn't touch, not at first. We were just two starving people feeding each other words. He told me about his childhood, about his fears of failing, things he said he could never tell Clara. And I told him about the stories I wanted to write, the dreams I kept locked away. One night, my mother almost caught us. Julian was dropping me off after a late-night drive. We were parked a block away from my house, the engine idling. He reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my cheek. Just as he leaned in, my mother's car turned the corner, her headlights sweeping across our windshield. I shoved Julian away and ducked low in the seat. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. We held our breath as her taillights disappeared into our driveway. She didn't see us, but the close call didn't scare me off. It made it more real. It made the air between us electric. I was falling in love for the first time in my life, and it was with the one person I could never have. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was destructive. Every time I looked at my parents, I felt like a monster. But when I was with Julian, I felt alive. For 20 years, I had been the good girl, the quiet girl, the invisible girl. Julian made me feel seen. He was the first person to look at me and see a woman, not just Clara's little sister. I was willing to burn the whole world down just to keep that feeling. The secrets were stacking up like a house of cards. One wrong move, one breeze, and everything would come crashing down. I knew the danger, but I couldn't stop. I was driving a car with no brakes, heading straight for a cliff, and all I could do was press the gas pedal down harder. It happened on a Friday night. My parents were at a fundraiser in the next city over, and Clara was supposed to be at a house viewing. Julian came over to my house to drop off some paperwork my father needed. He stood in the kitchen doorway, the yellow overhead light casting long shadows across the linoleum. He didn't leave. The silence in the house was heavy, thick with everything we hadn't said. He walked over to where I was standing by the counter. He didn't say a word. He just reached out and pulled me into his arms. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. When his lips met mine, it was like a fuse blowing. All the months of tension, of stolen glances and quiet conversations, exploded. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, tangling my fingers in his hair. We were kissing, like drowning people gasping for air. We stumbled backward, colliding with the kitchen table. A ceramic bowl shattered on the floor, the sound echoing through the empty house. We didn't care. Nothing mattered but the heat of his skin and the way he whispered my name against my neck. I heard the front door click open. Then came the sound of high heels on the hardwood floor. Clara's voice cut through the air, sharp and clear, calling out for me. We froze. Julian's hands were still on my waist, his face pale as a ghost. I looked toward the kitchen archway, and there stood Clara, her keys still clutched in her hand. Her eyes darted from me to her husband, to the broken bowl on the floor. The world stopped turning. Clara didn't scream. That was the scariest part. She just stood there, her face turning a sickly shade of gray. Then she looked at Julian. He dropped his hands from my waist as if my skin had suddenly turned to fire. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. Clara whispered, "How long?" Julian didn't answer. He just grabbed his jacket from the chair and walked past her, out into the night. He didn't look back at me. Not once. He left me alone in that kitchen with my sister. Clara walked over to me, her eyes filled with a cold, dead rage I had never seen before. She didn't slap me. She didn't yell. She picked up her phone and dialed my parents. 5 minutes later, the front door burst open. My father came in like a hurricane. My mother was right behind him, her hand pressed to her mouth. Clara didn't have to say much. The broken bowl on the floor and the look on my face told the whole story. My father's face turned deep purple. He pointed a finger at me, his hand shaking with fury. He told me I was a disease. He told me I had destroyed our family, that I was no longer his daughter. My mother just wept silently in the corner, refusing to look at me. I tried to explain. I tried to tell them it was real, that I loved him. The word love made my father's eyes bulge. He told me to pack my things and get out of his house. I tried to walk toward Clara, to apologize, but she stepped back as if I were a leper. She told me she never wanted to see my face again. She said I was dead to her. It took less than 10 minutes for 20 years of a life to be dismantled. My father grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the front door. He didn't give me time to put on shoes. He shoved me out into the freezing night. The door slammed shut, the heavy deadbolt sliding into place with a final, metallic thud. I was outside, in the cold, completely alone. The house was dark, my family was gone. It has been a year since that night. I didn't see Julian again. He didn't call, didn't write, didn't try to find me. He stayed with Clara. They moved 2 states away to start over. He chose safety over whatever we had, leaving me to pay the price for both of us. My family erased me. They changed the locks, they blocked my number, and they told the rest of our community that I had moved away for work. No one calls. On holidays, I sit in my tiny, cheap apartment and eat diner food alone. I am a ghost to the people who raised me. Sometimes I walk past the old library, looking through the windows at the glowing lights inside. I see the quiet girls working there, and I wonder if they know how fragile their perfect lives are. I lost my family, my home, and my sister. But in the quiet of my new lonely life, I have found something else. I am no longer invisible. I made a choice, a terrible, destructive choice, but it was mine. The price of being seen was losing everything I had. But as I sit in the dark, I still find myself wondering if the warmth of that first kiss was worth the freeze that followed. This is one of the most quiet, devastating stories I have ever read. There are no villains here, no easy answers, just the terrible truth that sometimes the first time you ever feel alive is also the day you burn your whole life down. Would you like me to adjust anything, or write a continuation of this?